About a month ago, competitive Pokemon YouTuber PokeAimMD sent me a message saying that he'd be going to the Milwaukee Regional on May 2nd, but for the entire month of April, he'd be doing a subathon. That's a marathon where you stream every single day for hours. This meant he wouldn't have the time to catch whatever team he ends up using in-game, because he'd be streaming so much. So he asked me if I could do it. I said yes, because I want to show you what getting a legitimate team in the current VGC format is like, where there's 2 restricted Pokemon allowed. Previously, these types of formats led to tons of hacking because of how difficult it can be to get these Pokemon. But thanks to Scarlet and Violet's DLC, is it any better than it used to be? Well, let's find out. Before I begin, let's lay the ground rules. 1. I will be using a freshly completed copy of Pokemon Violet. I've played through the entire story up until capturing Terrapagos. I've also unlocked 6-star raids, but I've not gone out of my way to catch anything special or get any items in particular. 2. There are no glitches allowed. This includes the clone glitches in Scarlet and Violet 1.0 up until the most recent Smeargle clone glitch, and both of these have been patched out anyway. I want to assess how Game Freak intended for team building to work, and they didn't intend glitches. 3. I can use whatever games I deem necessary. In Scarlet and Violet, as long as a Pokemon can be effectively transferred from home, it's fair game to use. 4. When available, I will use RNG Manipulation. It is not banned by any rules, and it's different from glitches. I'll talk more about this later though. 5. I will be timing the whole thing using a live timer somewhere on the screen to see how long everything takes. So I told AIM I'd only need about a week to make the team, but to keep me updated on what he was looking at so I could make plans as he was ironing out his squad. Eventually, he sends me this paste, saying he's 100% sure on everything but Ditto, and he's still testing out the last Pokemon. That's enough for me to get started, so we're off. It's time to get Pokemon. So this already starts off a bit weird compared to what I usually do. Typically, I prep items and other things that I'll need that aren't Pokemon first. Then I'll go catch everyone at once. But when AIM messaged me with the paste from earlier, I was in the middle of working on a video about Zapdos and streaming attempts on it. It's a bit of a long story, but I was trying to get a perfect competitive Zapdos in Fire Red using RNG Manipulation, and this item, the TGTV. I obtained it in like 30 minutes when I had planned to stream for quite some time that day. So to pass some time, I headed to Naval Rock to see if I could get a perfect Ho-Oh for Joey's team using this technique. So let's talk about it. What is RNG Manipulation? Is it legal? And what does the TGTV have to do with it? I get tons of comments every time I make a video like this telling me that RNG Manipulation is illegal. It's basically the same as hacking, that I'm cheating, etc. Is any of it true though? Well, no, I don't think so. The main rule everyone cites is this in the VGC rulebook, 4.3, illegally manipulated Pokemon. Okay, that sounds bad. I am manipulating a Pokemon after all, but what's the text of the rule? It says, the use of external devices, such as a mobile app, to modify or create items or Pokemon in a competitor's battler team is expressly forbidden. Competitors found to have Pokemon or items that have been tampered with may receive a disqualification, regardless of whether the Pokemon or items belong to that competitor or were traded for. When I read this rule, I actually do not think it's talking about RNG manipulation, and here's why. RNG manipulation does not alter, modify, or create Pokemon. This rule seems to be talking about external devices used to modify the game's data, or alter it. In older generations, this would be done with an action replay, when nowadays it's done with hacked switches running bots that you can trade for over Discord. Well, what about external devices? Does RNG manipulation use anything like that? Kind of, depending on what you mean by external devices. Let me walk you through this Ho-Oh RNG manip step by step so you can see what I mean. So what even is RNG manipulation? RNG is an acronym. It stands for Random Number Generator. It's just a way to have a computer make things happen randomly or cause luck to happen in games. Well, how do I manipulate it then? In Fire Red, it's kind of hard. It's usually 2 frame perfect inputs. In the 3rd generation, the games passively change what the random number is doing every time the screen is drawn, and this happens every 1/60th of a second. Typically, this is done twice in Fire Red. Once at the title screen, this determines our initial RNG position, and once we hit A to encounter a Pokemon. So where does the external device come in? Well, on my computer, I go to a website that can tell me when I have to press A to receive the Ho-Oh I want. I then put that information into a countdown timer. When the timer ends, it beeps and I press A with my hand on my DS in rhythm to the beep to hopefully time out the 1/60th of a second window correctly. So these apps on my computer aren't connected to my DS in any way. It's just telling me info about what I'm supposed to do. I don't view it any different as using Showdown to plan and test a team, or a damage calculator to figure out what stats I need a certain Pokemon to have, or using Pikalytics to see what are the common spreads people are running on the ladder. None of this stuff modifies my game or anything. It just gives me more info that the game doesn't typically show you. Now, with this Ho-Oh, I actually had to do 3 of these frame perfect inputs. Again, I was just trying to kill time for a stream by targeting a Ho-Oh in Gen 3. The only Ho-Oh I had available to me was over a 20-minute wait away in terms of the random numbers advancing passively. This would be boring, so I pulled out the TGTV. This item adds an extra frame perfect input in exchange for advancing the random number at 313 times its usual speed. I actually just made a whole video about this if you want to check it out. So for Aim's Ho-Oh, I had to hit A on the title screen, close the TV, and then press up to walk into Ho-Oh, all with 1/60th of a second precision 3 times consecutively. This is one of the most difficult manips that you can perform in any game, and there's tons of other ways to get a Ho-Oh, even a shiny one, that are better and faster than what I did here. But I guess I was just locked in, because in 1 hour and 29 minutes, I found an adamant 5 IV Ho-Oh. Yes, that is a long time, but the cool part about this is I won't have to use any bottle caps or mints once this Ho-Oh is in Scarlet and Violet. It'll only need an ability patch. Oh, and Aim also requested I name all of his Pokemon after his subscribers on YouTube or Twitch. So meet Crigis? The last thing to talk about with Rule 4.3 is simple, which is the modify or create part. As you can see, I got this Ho-Oh with just a DS and a copy of Fire Red. The website and timer I used didn't modify or create the Ho-Oh. The game did. You could get this Ho-Oh just from soft resetting if you were lucky enough, even though it's very unlikely. I find it hard to believe you can view any part of RNG manipulation as breaking anything described by Rule 4.3. From my perspective, everyone is just seeing the word manipulation in Rule 4.3 and in RNG manipulation and thinking, same word, must be this. But maybe you have a different idea as to what this rule is trying to get at or why people think that they're related. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. By the way, all RNG manipulation works like this. It is just a glorified calculator and a timer telling me when to hit A or when to boot the game or something like that. So now that we understand RNG manipulation and got Ho-Oh, let's move on to the next Pokemon in the list. After I showed Aim the Ho-Oh, he got pretty hyped that it was shiny. So I committed then. I'm gonna get him an all shiny team. This is a lot of extra work and not the most efficient way to get a team. Most people don't need nor do they care about shinies. But this is the Jote, PokeAim MD. I cannot let him go to a regional without cool Pokemon. However, you would be right to say at this point that this is not the experience of the average team builder. It's not going to be fair to characterize this as the official way to build a team, since I'll spend so much time trying to get specifically shiny Pokemon. And I think that's a valid concern, which is why I am also making an entire second team for Swave form for the same event. His team I'll do quick and efficiently, and we can compare it to how long it took me to make PokeAim's team once I finish that. Here's his squad, along with PokeAim's final locked-in squad, which he sent me post-Ho-Oh capture. The most difficult thing on both teams are obviously the legendaries, which are 1 per game, and all of the Pokemon who need specific stats. This is Farigiraf, Iron Bundle, and Amoonguss, who all need 0 attack, and Iron Hands, who needs 0 speed, while Amoonguss needs a fairly specific 27 speed IV. Okay, let's continue with Aim's team to see what the rest of it was like. Next up was Farigiraf, who I got as a Girafarig in Pokemon Emerald using RNG manipulation again. I went with this because anytime I need a 0 attack Pokemon, I would much rather do something like an RNG manip, which is skillful and almost a minigame in and of itself, than catch a Pokemon like 100 times over hoping for the correct IV. It's just more fun. Plus, when doing RNG manips this way, I can guarantee perfect IVs and a correct nature, which avoids me needing to buy mints or bottle caps, even though that's not a huge deal in Scarlet and Violet anymore. This manip is actually pretty similar to what I did in Fire Red, but much easier. Emerald's RNG is actually bugged, where the initial state of the game's randomness is always the same, 0. This doesn't give me a lot of options for a Girafarig that would be good. I get around this by using contest paintings. Talking to one of these resets the RNG to whatever the game's V blank counter is currently at for some reason. This counter increments every single time the screen is drawn, which makes it a 1/60th of a second frame perfect input. Now, I can use this to change my initial seed to something with a good Girafarig nearby. I confirm I'm on the correct seed by doing a wild capture and checking the IVs of the Pokemon, and then I head to the battle frontier to lose a match. Why? Well, to make a battle record. This is a replay feature that lets me rewatch either a frontier match or a versus match against another copy of Emerald. Rather than storing a video, Game Freak stores all the Pokemon, the moves you made, and the current value of the RNG state, and recreates that battle instead. And that last part is what matters. The battle record resets the RNG to what it was at the start, meaning I don't have to hit my seed every single time like in Fire Red. I just have to do it once. Once I'm on the seed and save it, I wait a bit more to get close to my Girafarig. It's about 30 minutes away. But by using another battle record, we can just wait one time, so every attempt for our giraffe is under a minute. And I actually failed this part once though. I had to go to the bathroom really badly and got up during the last minute and overshot the timer. So I had to wait the 30 minutes twice. Oops. Anyway, once this wait is over, I head to the Safari Zone to encounter the giraffe. Emerald's basic RNG state works the same as Fire Red, passively increasing every video frame. It's much easier though since I'm not doing it 2 times consecutively. Eventually, the bold 5IV0 attack giraffe shines, and I name it Jolty. That took 2 hours and 2 minutes. It actually would have been almost exactly the same as Ho-Oh if I didn't screw up the wait time. But we move on. By the way, if you're interested in learning any of the cool RNG manipulation tricks that I was showing off, consider heading to my new website, retailrng.com. This is a website meant for people to be able to learn from the beginning the best way to RNG manipulate on their real cartridges without any hacking or glitching. We start with the simplest manips that you could possibly learn and work our way up into more difficult tricks so you could get perfect competitive shiny Pokemon. This is focused exclusively on retail hardware. Right now we've only got Gen 3, but we're working on getting Gen 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Right now I'm working on a Gen 6 guide and Hefe is working on some Gen 8 guides for BDSP. So if you're interested in that, please check it out and share it with your friends. Back to the video. At this point, I have to trade these two up, so I send Ho-Oh over to Emerald and do the usual transfer process. This is actually a big disadvantage to using old games. To do this transfer, I need a DS, Emerald, Heart Gold, a 3DS, Black 2, and Pokemon Transporter, and Pokemon Bank, and any 3DS Pokemon game, and Pokemon Home. It can take a while because the GBA to DS transfer and then the Gen 4 to Gen 5 transfers are like little mini games. And Gen 5 to Bank takes a while because the connection to Pokemon Bank is becoming increasingly unstable. It took me several tries to connect over the course of like an hour. The end is nigh. Anyway, once everyone is in Scarlet and Violet, we can begin collecting the rest of the Pokemon, who are all exclusive to those games. In my copy of Violet, I've done all of the main story through Terrapagos and unlocked the Master Ball item printer. In order to use the item printer though, I need BP, which you get through doing Blueberry Quest. I grinded them for about an hour and 20 minutes with people online in order to upgrade the terrarium and do some other stuff. Luckily, during this grinding, one of Blueberry Quest's tasks is to KO a certain amount of Pokemon in Let's Go mode. This grants me Pokemon parts, which is the other resource I need for the item printer. But what is this thing and why is it so important? Well, right now, all I'm using it for is some Master Balls. This thing can print tons of rare items, and with the right luck, it can even print Master Balls. And somehow, some way, it is the only thing in Scarlet and Violet that can be RNG manipulated, and it's really, really easy. The printer uses whatever the current date and time is when you choose to print an item down to the second. That's it. It is literally 60 times larger than our window of time in Emerald version or in Fire Red. Prominent data miner Anubis has a write-up of how this works and the best targets. I also made a video guide on it last year. Right now, I have to hit a date, print 1, and then it'll go into Pokeball Lotto mode. After that, I 5 print and get my Master Balls. Technically, this isn't required, but it'll make the repeat catching I'm doing go by a little bit quicker, especially when I'm going for a 0 IV Pokemon. After that's over, it's time to hunt. Like I said, I want a 0 speed shiny Iron Hands, and there's no RNG manips for Pokemon in Scarlet and Violet. So the only way to get this is to hunt. I don't have the shiny charm, so it's sandwich time. Iron Hands is the only electric type in the Area 0 depths. So I use Papa Hefe's guide to make an onion, pepper, and prosciutto sandwich, which increases the rate electric type Pokemon spawn, and also increases the rate at which electric type shinies spawn. I drop down to the depths, and within moments of booting Violet for the first time in months, I get a game-breaking bug where my camera desyncs from the player and I softlock. What is happening? Okay, so after I reboot, make the sandwich again, and head down to the rock again, I wait until about 15 Iron Hand spawns. If there's no shiny, I run away until they're all gone, and then I repeat over and over and over and over again. This was pretty tedious, and I actually despawned a few shinies along the way. A buff from the sandwich only lasts about 30 minutes, so if I didn't have a 0 IV shiny Iron Hands by the time the buff was up, I would reset my game to preserve the Herba Mysticas and other ingredients required for these sandwiches. I'm not a shiny hunter. I got into RNG Manips to get competitive Pokemon without hacking, so you'd think this would be something that I wouldn't be able to handle well. The agonizing resets, the long waits, etc. Nope. It actually turns out that plenty of RNG Manips are very, very tedious, so I built up quite a tolerance for waiting. In addition, I find that stuff like this goes by with relatively little pain if you're not focused on the end. I lived in the moment, thinking about other stuff, talking to chat, etc. And after about 10 hours and 52 minutes, and 18 shiny Iron Hands seen, I found a 0 speed shiny Iron Hands. Now remember, Pokemon gotten this way still need to be patched up with mints and caps to fix their IVs and natures and such. That being said, I'll move on to Iron Bundle next. It needs a 0 attack this time. The process was identical to Iron Hands, except with ice power sandwiches. Iron Bundle was also much easier to notice as a shiny, since the change is more drastic. It's fully chromed up. I, of course, still failed a few shinies because of the wonky despawn mechanics. Unbelievably, it took me almost exactly the same amount of time at 10 hours and 44 minutes, and the exact same amount of shinies seen at 18. I probably got pretty lucky, since I think my shiny odds were 1 in 1024, and each shiny had a 1 in 32 chance of being the one that I needed. In any case, we are almost done hunting. The last shiny I can even get is Iron Treads, who needs no specific IVs. This means I can catch the first shiny that I see. I make another sandwich, this time for steel types, and I see a shiny Iron Treads in 8 minutes. Shiny hunting sure is easy nowadays, isn't it? Anyway, the last mon to catch is Miraidon, who is shiny locked. It is also completely stat locked, so I don't have to reset for those either. The lowest attack, the one that you can trade, is allowed to have is 31, so it's a moot point. So I just catch the one right away. We're lucky I don't like restricted metas, because this could have been captured otherwise if I traded it for a Koraidon or something. Although, I guess we're double lucky because since its stats are locks, it'd be easy to reset the EVs and such if I captured it and used it for some other purpose. Anyway, with the last capture done, it's time to patch up the Pokemon. Unlike the Pokemon caught in Emerald and Fire Red, these guys are going to need a lot of work. And to do it, we're going to go back to the item printer. This thing can print tons of useful items for us. The first of which I'll go for is ability patches. It might look like I only need one for Ho-Oh, which I do, but the real benefit of patches is that they sell for 125,000 each, and it takes like 1 minute to get 7 of them. So I do this a few times until I have around 30, just in case, you know? After that, this is also kind of the best way to farm for Terra Shards. These things used to be a nightmare to get. Before the DLC, they took about 1 hour for 50 shards, which is the quantity you need to change a Pokemon's Terra type. Now, even without the Shard Charm, which I do not have, you can get tons of shards in 2 different ways. The first is just picking Terra Shards up from the ground. In the terrarium, Terra Shards are often found in bundles of like 15 or sometimes more. If you're going around KOing Pokemon for parts or TMs or other such things, you will inevitably get a lot of shards this way. Just look at my collection. The second technique is the item printer, which is what I'll be using for this video. The reason for this is because it's easier to measure and still really, really fast. You can do 1 print manip, which again is a 1 second leeway window to get all 50 shards that you need. 50 shards in at most 55 seconds, I think is really good. In addition, I don't have to get Terra Shards for Iron Treads because it came with the ground Terra type. What Terra type a regular Pokemon spawns with is a 50-50 chance between either of its 2 types, if it has 2. But after I did all of the ability patch farming, I kind of ran out of Poke parts. If you're using the item printer a lot, this can happen. I found the best remedy for it is Happy Knee parts. They're highly valued and you can farm a ton of them with a normal encounter power 2 sandwich, which is what I do. Luckily, the recipe for this is pretty easy and doesn't require any rare ingredients. So I farmed them for about 50 minutes using Let's Go mode. The only part about this that's bad is that the best place to farm Happy Knee parts is in Paldea, which means I cannot use the Synchro machine, which I find is a much better way to farm these parts, as Let's Go mode is barely functional. Anyway, after all my grinding here is done, it's back to the item printer. I proceeded to spend 35 minutes doing the aforementioned manips for every Pokemon's Terra type. This is because, despite the fact that they're easy to do, if you miss your target once, it can be quite a long wait. especially if you're going for any of the double manips where you trigger the 2x item bonus mode or something like that. At this point, I really almost have everything I need to finish up the Pokemon. And this part isn't super exciting. It's me selling all my ability patches and buying all the vitamins I need to EV train, mints to change natures, an ability capsule, and the items the Pokemon need for battle. EV training in Scarlet and Violet is very easy, thanks to vitamins being uncapped and money being easy to farm. Vitamins give EVs in multiples of 10, so 20 HP ups gives this Ho-Oh 200 HP EVs. But what do I do about the remaining 4 EVs that I need? Well, I use feathers. You get these in droves from the ground when you're running around, and also from doing Terra raid battles. And just by unlocking 6-star raids, I have plenty of feathers. Feathers work like vitamins, but in multiples of 1, so 1 health feather gives 1 HP EV. It's that simple. This takes a bit of time, but it's nothing too crazy. I also have to actually go to the Hyper Training Man and give him the bottle caps in exchange for some training. After all this, the second to last thing to do is moves. I have to make sure all the creatures have all the attacks they need, and boy howdy is this annoying. Allow me to go on a tangent. This is probably my least favorite change for competitive play they've done. I think it's even worse than things were in Sword and Shield. Why are TMs not reusable, or at least all of them purchasable? Why must I kill 8 Frigibax, 5 Goomy, and 3 Applin to get this Draco Meteor TM? Frigibax and Goomy are not even common spawns. I have to use a food I bought in a barbecue place to get them to even show up in a reasonable amount. This issue was solved from Gen 5 to 7. TMs were infinitely reusable. I think they changed it to be this way because rather than having an actual fun post-game, they want this to be like an MMO material grinding with raids and for other gear and stuff. It's so frustrating and like not fun. It has been remedied somewhat by the DLC. A lot of TMs can be purchased at Blueberry Academy, but only with BP from BBQs. This, to me, is still not good enough. I guess it wouldn't be so bad if no rare Pokemon had parts, but I don't know. Especially since I'm using the item printer so much, this gets to be problematic, I find. Okay, enough with the rambling. Getting every Pokemon's TMs and also giving them PP ups took me about an hour. All in all, it took me 30 hours and 43 minutes to get AIM's team from start to finish. This is actually faster than going for teams without shinies in Gens 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. I think this goes to show how much Game Freak has actually improved the process of building a team, that it's this fast even when I'm going inefficiently. So how about Swave Form's team? What does that look like instead? For the most part, it's the same, but faster. Ho-Oh I obtained from Snacksworth, and I didn't have to reset for it since it doesn't need any specific IVs. And I was able to get it because you unlock these by doing group BBQ quests. Koraidon is the same as Miraidon, with locked stats, so I didn't need to reset for it either. Flutter Mane took about 30 minutes to get with a 0 attack IV, just catching a million of them. Chien Pao took a little while longer. It's because I didn't have any of the stakes pulled from the ground, so it took me about 25 minutes to find them all and then catch it. Amoonguss was the Pokemon I thought would take the longest because it needed 2 specific stats: 0 attack for foul play damage reduction and 27 speed to make it 1 point slower than the fairly cluttered base 50 speed tier. So I chose to RNG Manipulate in Black and White 1 using breeding. I genuinely thought that this would be faster than catching it in Scarlet and Violet. There I would have had to catch a Pokemon with 0 attack and then a female Amoonguss with 27 speed, or vice versa. I would then use the Power Brace and the Power Anklet to force pass down those stats, or use a Destiny Knot until I got lucky. In my experience, getting a specific IV via random catching a bunch of Pokemon takes around 30 to 45 minutes. So doing that twice and then some breeding could have taken a little while. In Gen 5, I RNG Maniped a shiny Fungus egg. That plus transferring up through Bank took about an hour. I think it was very slightly faster, but I cannot guarantee it. The last Mon for the team was Raging Bolt, who was actually what took by far the longest. This is because in order to unlock it, you need to have 200 Pokemon caught in your terrarium dex. I had like 70. So catching this many Mons took me 3 hours and 33 minutes, which is crazy. But after I caught everything, I went and caught the Raging Bolt, who I had to make sure had an electric Terra type so I wouldn't have to change it. It could have Dragon as the other one. And again, all of these Pokemon, except Fungus, need to have their stats, nature, and abilities fixed. After catching the squad, which took a total of 5 hours, the remainder of my time was spent patching them up, EV training them, changing their Terra types, and getting their moves. And I had to do the grind for Draco Meteor again, by the way. Oh my gosh, I can't get over it. Anyway. All that extra stuff took another few hours, with Swave's total time being 8 hours and 47 minutes. For the whole team, That's less than the time it took me to hunt for a single one of AIM's 0 attack shinies. But it's still basically one full workday plus a lunch break. A lot of people might say that this isn't too bad, and they would be right when you compare it to other Pokemon games or metas. But I honestly still think this is ridiculous. What happens if I need a different speed Iron Hands for the next time I want to play? Or I need a specific speed Ho-Oh for a different metagame? Do I have to replay the game or go capture Ho-Oh in an old game? I honestly think this is still outrageous. For competitive play, the legendaries need to respawn infinitely, or they should just have a team builder built into the cartridge, which I hope is what Pokemon Champion in the coming months fixes. This game, if it does everything right, could put me out of business in terms of making YouTube videos anyway. We'll see, but I'm gonna proceed with caution. And until then, I'm gonna continue making teams for people and having fun doing it. I hope you all enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for PokeAim and Sway for giving me the opportunity to make your teams, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.